Okay, so before we read the gospel, pay attention to each of the characters, because I have it on good authority that the preacher is going to ask you which character you identify with in this passage. So, now, the gospel according to Matthew chapter 25. Jesus said to the disciples, "For it is as if a man going on a journey summoned his slaves and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. The one who had received the 5 talents went off and traded with them and made 5 more talents. In the same way, the one who had the 2 talents made 2 more talents. But the one who had received the 1 talent went off and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those slaves came and settled accounts with them. Then the one who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 more talents, saying, 'Master, you handed over to me 5 talents. See, I have made 5 more talents.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master.' And the one with the 2 talents also came forward, saying, 'Master, you handed over to me 2 talents. See, I have made 2 more talents.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master.' Then the one who had received the 1 talent also came forward, saying, 'Master, I know that you are a harsh man, reaping what you did not sow and gathering where you did not scatter. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours.' But his master replied, 'You wicked and lazy slave. You knew, did you, that I reap where I did not sow and gather where I did not scatter? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and on my return I would have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one with the 10 talents. For to all those who have, more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But for those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. As for this worthless slave, throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.'" The gospel of the Lord.
So as promised, it's time for some participatory exercises. You don't have to participate if you don't want to, but I think it will be a little bit more fun if you do. So we have 4 characters. The first slave with 10 talents, the second slave with 5, first with 5, second with 2, the third with 1. I can do math. And then the master. So I am curious which one of these characters you identify with when you hear the story read today, when you hear this parable read. If you identify with the first with 5 talents, raise your hand. There we go. If you identify with the second slave with 2 talents, raise your hand. There we go. If you identify with the third slave with 1 talent, raise your hand. And then finally, if you identify with the master, raise your hand. Okay, I was curious. Now, another processing question. How many of you like this parable? You can be honest. Oh, I see. Oh, no, that's a thumbs down. Okay, there we go. Interesting. Okay, how many of you don't like this parable? There we go. There are all those hands. I was wondering where they were on the last question. Okay, well, I will be honest. I actually do like this parable, so that puts me in an awkward position now. No, I didn't realize how many people didn't until this week as I was preparing for this sermon, and I kept on running into countless people, a number of them pastors, namely because I was at a pastor's conference this past week, who profess to really not liking this parable. And that is okay. Before we go any further, I do want to remind us that parables are not moral instructions. They are not things for us to solve. They're not riddles that we can figure out the perfect answer to, a strategy to weave through the tough edges, figure out how to live perfectly, and boom, we've got it, because that, my friends, is works righteousness. And there is no place for grace when we're trying to be perfect. The other thing about parables is that they are meant to confound. Specifically, this parable comes when between two other ones. We heard the last one last week. We'll hear the next one next Sunday. And these parables are about the reign of God, also maybe known as the kingdom of God. What the kingdom of God is like, what it's like for God's reign to enter into our world. That is not something we're going to be able to understand. That's something that we are going to be confused by, astonished by, confounded by, perhaps even terrified by. How many of you would say that you are confounded by this parable? Yeah, thank you for the honesty. I appreciate that. There's a gift in not knowing. It's an uncomfortable text, to be sure. Previous translations would translate the word slave as servant, but as an Old Testament professor of mine said, there are no servants in the Bible. There's the reality of slavery. It is a very uncomfortable dynamic, but it's one that I don't think we should erase from this text, that there is a power dynamic present here, and that is part of what should confound us. But as a way of entering into this text, this is something I have found helpful to maybe experience what this parable might be trying to offer us, or maybe to have an experience of saying, no, thank you, I don't like this parable very much, I'm okay with that, but still getting into the experience of this parable, we're going to reenact it. What I'd like you to do is find a group of between 4, 6, 8 people, between 4 and 8 people, and just get in that group, and then we're going to have a little game to play. Ooh, that's right. You didn't expect that this morning, did you? All right, go ahead, find between 4 and 8 other people, get in a group, make room for everyone, be attentive to who can move and who cannot, and make sure that everyone is included. But let's return to this parable of the talents, this difficult, unpleasant, thoroughly mired in materialism parable, right? But I want to observe something that you all did. You all responded to the talent that you were given. The bad news is, I do not have this money to give you. I can also not give you the building. I cannot give you the grounds outside. I cannot even give you all your friends or loved ones. There were some people that had that. But what I can show you is this. You have permission. There is nothing holding you back from receiving the grace of God, because that grace already dwells within you. From the moment that you were born, you were given the greatest gift that one could give, and that is grace, that is love, and that is you. And all of you just now, in all of your groups, you responded to that gift of grace. Whether it was $50 or whether it was $5 million, and even, let's be honest, $5 million doesn't do today what it once did. You responded. A gift is not a gift unless it is given freely, unless you can do whatever you want to do with it. I would say therein lies perhaps the frustration I have with the character of the master in the parable of the talents. It was brought to my attention this week when I was talking with another pastor colleague at this conference that maybe the master is not a good character in this parable. Maybe the master is not someone that we should be looking to as evidencing the kingdom of God, the reign of God. Maybe that the third slave with 1 talent deserved a lot more forgiveness, a lot more grace. But maybe it says something about a society that we live in that only looks for growth, that looks to money as a symbol of permission for who gets to keep on going, who gets to keep growing, who gets to live a pleasant life, who has permission to feel free. Maybe instead in this parable, we receive a different image of the reign of God that is emanating among us, that is already here in us. It is a version of living where we all have permission to be free, where we all have permission to believe that we are loved, that we have grace, and that we are enough. Because when we believe that we are enough, then we're a lot more likely to make sure that other people have enough. We're a lot more likely to stop competing for resources and instead share them. We're a lot more likely to look at our neighbor and see someone to help, someone to lift up, someone to care for, rather than as someone to keep down, keep in their place, keep from coming for the resources that we believe belong to us. It is by believing that what we are given is enough. This earth, our lives, ourselves, each other. By believing that we are enough, we will have the courage to believe that we can love and that that is enough. Because receive this message, this good news. By grace you have been saved. There is no gift greater than that. There is nothing more that you need than to recognize that you have been given the gift of life and the gift of grace, and you are free to do whatever you will with that life. In the words of the poet Wendell Berry, what we need is here. We don't need to wait for more. We don't need to wait for permission. New life rises when we believe that we are enough and that God is enough. So you have been given the greatest talent in the world. You've been given the greatest talent in the universe, the opportunity to believe that you are loved. Will you take that? Will you respond to it? Will you believe that you are enough? Will you believe that we are enough? Will you believe that God is enough?